Hi, here we are today for day 3, for the third window, door, however you want to call this, of the 2025 Inkvent Calendar from Diamine. And today is a red ink called Carousel, there, and it is a pigment ink. I have to say that I'm always afraid of pigment inks, mostly because I'm not that good at keeping my pens perfectly clean all the time, so this one may be a problem. I need to be careful with the pens that I choose for this ink, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So, next step, to make the swatch of this ink. Don't go away, I'll be right back. So here we are with the pipette, and this is an ink that I fear a little bit. I'm not very comfortable around pigmented inks because I am me. Let me put this into a cup of water just to not dry all the ink on the pipette. And okay, the ink is closed to avoid accidents, and let's see how this apparently beautiful ink will perform. As I told you, I'm a little bit afraid because I'm not very good at pen hygiene and I don't want to let such an ink to dry in my pens, so I need to be extra careful. I find this ink to be a little thick, even here now on the knife. When I'm starting to clean it with water, it sticks a little bit on the knife blade. So I think I really need to be careful, and maybe I will put this ink in less expensive pens. Mostly because there will be lots of pens with inks and I'm not sure that I'll be able to use them all and in a timely manner, so avoiding any ink to dry. It always happens every year. There are some inks that get a little bit more crusty because they start to dry. They don't use the pens fast enough to use up 50 pens. So that's it. Doesn't matter now. It looks a little bit on the pinkish side and it doesn't show that much shading, some between darker and lighter areas, and the grid pattern is still visible beneath the ink. So I'll search for some similar swatches of other inks and I'll be right back to make the rest of the video. And let's see now the swatch now dry and see how this ink looks like. So it is a very, I would say it's almost like a very thick layer of ink, but it is quite transparent because you can see all the lines printed on the paper. And in the places where there is more ink, it looks there is almost like the start of a golden sheen, not very clear. This is not a sheening ink. And here where less pigment is laid down on paper, it looks a little bit more on the pinkish or magenta side of the color. Let me just move this light. So let's see how this one compares with other red inks, or this kind of red ink that I may have for comparison. I don't have that many reds. The red that I have the most is this. This is the Parker Quink red. This is one that I have the biggest amount at home, liters of it. So I think this color is not that different, but this one is much more saturated with much less line variation, as you may see, or at less shading. This one has much more shading, much more difference between the darker and lighter areas, but those both have kind of a pink undertone. I have also here the Monte Grappa red, which has also magenta in it, or pink, but it is much stronger, going more toward the fuchsia color. It also has a little bit of a start of a sheen, but the color is not comparable because you can see it is a different tone. Then I have the Divine Design Pink, which is an interesting ink. This one is clearly pink, but it has golden sheen, and it is more similar to the lighter parts of the Parker than on the darker parts is similar to this, because this is pink and this is red. So any of these inks are really the same. This is the one that goes closer. So then we go to the other Diamine Inkvent calendars that I opened. There are a few that I didn't. And the inks that I found that I could bring here for comparison are from 2019, the color number 2, Candy Cane, which is very similar to the Parker, not that much with this one, but it's more similar with the Parker. We have the Ho Ho Ho, which is stronger, less pink. So number 6, we have the number 17, the Poinsettia, which is more now toward the dark red burgundy. We have the number 21, the Fire Amber, which is a much warmer and going towards orange. And then from 2024, the Winterberry. This one has shimmer. As you may see, this is a very beautiful one, and it's not also the same kind of ink. It also has some pink in it, but it is darker. It has a very different feel from this one. So I don't have any color that is clearly comparable. The closest would be the Parker Quink Red, but with a shading that this one doesn't have. When we go for the chromatography, what can we see? We can see here that we have a pretty water resistant ink. I usually do this and let it dry. Maybe I put some more ink there on that part just to make the line thicker, and maybe when I wet this it was how can I say, it was less dry, so some ink moved, but it really has no, here some ink dissolved, but after it is really dry, there is no ink movement. So where it stays, where it was put, that's where it stays. And that will show you when I'll make the water resistant test that I made when the ink was completely dry. There is no movement of ink whatsoever. So this is what it tells us, and we can't have much information about the components of the ink unless I did this when the ink was still very wet. So this was more a mistake of my methodology, but that's what happened. So for this ink, which pens did I choose to work with? I chose 2 pens as usual, and I confess that I went towards 2 more robust or inexpensive pens, because I'm usually very afraid of using inks with pigment to avoid clogging the pens. So one of the pens that I chose is one of those very inexpensive pens. This is, it looks like almost a Lamy CP1, but it is not. This is the Jinhao 65, which is a very inexpensive, that as far as I know you can, usually it is bought as pairs of 2 pens. Of course, if it's pairs it's 2, but you can buy in sets of 2, and it is clearly a copy of the Lamy CP1. I'm not saying this in a bad sense, but it is really inspired by the Lamy CP1. So cartridge converter pen, and it is very inexpensive, and that's what I chose. The nib for this pen, as you may see, there is an extra fine. The other pen that I chose was this one. This is also not expensive, but this is a German pen. This is the Super 5. This is the Arctic finish, which is the white one. And this is a brand that makes only a few pens with some different colors. This is Super 5. There is kind of a stamp there that is heat marked on the pen. They are plastic. They have a metal section. They have this nib, and they are made for a brand that sells pigment ink, waterproof ink, and these are the pens that they sell to use with that ink. So I would say these are the right pens for this kind of task. So this is a 0.5 steel nib. This pen is also a cartridge converter. I filled both with this one I filled with a syringe, this one I filled with the converter that is included. So this is what I used, and with these pens let me show you what I saw on paper. Again, 3 papers. First one, moleskin paper, which is not white, it's kind of this ivory color. The other 2 are white. The moleskin paper, you can see that it's not like there is a sheen, but it's like there is some glossiness for this ink. I wrote with these 2 pens, the extra fine and the 0.7 doesn't make that much difference, but then they make more difference here a little bit, but not that much. What can we see is, again, no feathering. There is some shading on this paper, there is no feathering, there is no bleed through. There is a very good behavior of this ink on paper. And here on paper, this ink, I would say it looks a little bit darker than it looks on the swatch. For the Oxford Optic paper, you have the same glossiness of the ink. Again, you don't see that much difference between the nibs. I would say this ink is a little bit drier when you write with it, and there is no massive ink flow, and there are no special properties, the perfect behavior, no bleed through, no feathering again, but actually that's not a common thing on the Oxford Optic paper. And then finally we go to the Navigator, the Portuguese copy paper, and here you can see that there is no feathering again. I think this paper is where you can see the difference between the 2 papers the most, because maybe this is the most absorbent paper of them all. And even if it is absorbent, you only see maybe the place where the nib stood on the paper for longer, like there is a little bit of a see-through, and here there is also a point, maybe I stopped with the nib there and you can see it better, but the behavior of this ink is perfect even in this paper that is not fountain pen friendly at all. Finally, we'll go for the Rhodia dot pad, which is the same paper that was used for these squares versus dot pad, but the same kind of paper, same quality. And here we can start with the drying time, and you may see at 5 seconds it only smeared just a tiny bit. At 10 seconds it was completely dry, so it takes less than 10 seconds to dry, which is quite good. The behavior again is very good, no bleed through, no problems, no feathering. And this is the line when I put the ink. I made the swirls, I let it dry, and then I put some water on it. And yes, I didn't forget, if you could see the paper, you would see that it is warped because of the water, and there is no smear of the water. It is completely waterproof. So if you're looking for a waterproof red ink, this is it. It behaves well. And so final, the only thing I would say is that the ink flow is not amazingly the best, but you can have a good writer ink, and you have some not water resistant, you have a waterproof ink once it's dry, and it takes less than 10 seconds to dry. So let's just make the usual sentence, first with the Jin Hao 55, with the 65 with the extra fine nib. So the quick, now it skipped there, don't know if it was my fault. The quick brown fox jumps, okay, over the lazy dog. It is skipping a little bit. I hope this is not that my worry that the nib is getting clogged. Let me just do this on a paper and see if, okay, I think when I did this I took any dry ink from the slit and now it writes well, but you can see this is something that can happen. And let's go for the Super 5 pen with the 0.7 nib, and with this pen I think the flow is much better. Maybe this pen caps better, it seals better, maybe it's just that. Oops, sorry. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. So you see, maybe an extra fine nib has a little ink flow, and this one has a better ink flow, and so this one skipped a little bit and this didn't. So this is my comparison, this is my review of ink for day number 3, and again, it behaves well. I would be a little bit afraid of this ink. I'm not blaming the ink, I'm blaming myself. I'm never sure around pigment inks. So it will not happen throughout this calendar if there are more inks like this, because I'll have more pens, and actually I already have 2. But in a normal situation I would have only 1 pen with a pigment ink, and it would be a pen that I will be using all the time, just to be sure I wouldn't let any ink dry on the pen. So again, in the end I may even talk about how it will clean from the pen, but we are not near the time where I'll have these pens cleaned. So this is all I had to show you, and I hope you enjoyed this review, and please be back, and tomorrow I will try to be back also with another Diamine Inkvent Calendar 2025 review. So see you tomorrow. Bye.